What if I told you that the image you have of a Roman legionary, the epic battles, the shining armor, misses the most important part of his existence? That the glory of combat was a rare, fleeting moment in a life defined not by the clash of swords, but by the unending, soul-crushing misery of the march. A 20-mile march lies ahead of you through hostile country, with over 80 pounds of gear digging into your shoulders. And your day won't end when you reach your destination. You're going to live it hour by hour, step by step. And by the end, you'll ask yourself, could I even survive one day? It ends only after you've built a fortified city from the ground up with your own 2 hands. This wasn't punishment. This was the brutal reality of a legionary's life. Your armor, the famous lorica segmentata, or a coat of mail, and your helmet, the gallia. Your large, curved shield, the scutum, could weigh over 20 pounds on its own. In it is everything needed for survival. A leather satchel with 3 days' ration spart of a monthly grain allotment that could be over 50 pounds. Usually carried as hardtack biscuits called buccellatum, so tough they had to be soaked in water to be edible. A pickaxe, a shovel, or a basket for moving earth. And most famously, 2 heavy, sharpened wooden stakes. These weren't for fighting. They were for building the defensive wall of the camp. They moved at a relentless, disciplined pace known as the gradus militaris. Recruits were drilled ferociously, expected to cover 20 Roman miles, about 18.5 modern miles in 5 summer hours. Marching with the men were the centurions, the hardened backbone of the legion. In their hands, they carried the vetus, a vine staff that was both a badge of office and a tool of brutal punishment. Falling behind was not an option. The fear of the centurion's staff, which could deliver vicious beatings, was a more immediate motivator than the fear of any distant enemy. It was this discipline that ensured the legion moved not as individuals, but as a single, unstoppable force. It's a side of their military often overlooked in favor of battlefield heroics. If you find this kind of logistical mastery fascinating, let us know in the comments what aspect of Roman military life we should explore next. The sun is low, your muscles are screaming, but your day is far from over. For many, the hardest part is just beginning. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it. For the Romans, stopping meant building a fortified city from scratch, a non-negotiable routine that saved countless legions from surprise attacks. The process was a marvel of standardization. Surveyors marked out the camp's rectangular plan, or castra, with 4 gates and a grid of streets. Using the tools they had carried all day, the legionaries would excavate a wide defensive ditch, throwing the earth inwards to create a rampart called an agger. Inside is not chaos, but an organized military town. The basic unit of the army was the contubernium, a group of 8 men who shared a tent. They were the soldier's family. The true story of Rome's expansion wasn't written in glorious charges, but in the millions of footsteps taken under the weight of an empire. It was a war fought daily against exhaustion, pain, and the limits of the human body. This was the machine that conquered the known world, an army of laborers, engineers, and above all, marchers. They were Marius's mules, who carried the Roman world on their shoulders, one brutal 20-mile day at a time. The question isn't just whether you could survive it, but what kind of person it would turn you into. It was this relentless grind that truly forged the Roman Empire. They marched, worked, and now cooked together, their leather tent their only shelter. But even inside the walls, the duties continued. Weapons and armor needed to be cleaned and repaired, and a quarter of the army stood on guard duty throughout the night. Okay. The next morning, they would tear it all down and do it again. Then, those 2 heavy stakes each man carried were driven into the top, their points interlocking to create a formidable defensive wall. If an enemy was near, half the soldiers would stand guard in full armor, while the other half worked. Think about that. After a full day's march carrying over 80 pounds, you now have to perform hours of intense manual labor before you can even think of eating or sleeping. Every soldier knew exactly where to go and what to do. On a standard campaign, this translated to a 7-hour march day after day. And these weren't marches on Rome's legendary paved roads. More often, they were through the rugged, unconquered forests of Germania or the hills of Britannia. On rough tracks or paths, they forged themselves every single night. Add it all up, and the total weight often exceeded 80 pounds, carried by men who were, on average, smaller than modern soldiers. You also carried a cooking pot, a sickle for foraging, and your few personal items. Then, your weapons, the heavy javelin, or pilum, and your short sword, the gladius. That's nearly 60 pounds, and the real work hasn't even begun. A soldier would chew on his bucellatum, perhaps with some dried meat or cheese. The most vital provision was a drink called pasca, a mix of cheap sour wine or vinegar and water. It sounds awful, but the vinegar helped kill bacteria in questionable water sources, making it safer to drink while providing hydration. The Emperor Hadrian himself was said to favor this simple soldier's diet. Imagine this: it's dawn, hours before the sun will rise. In this video, you're not just going to learn how the Roman legions marched. Our journey begins not with a trumpet call to battle, but with the groans of men waking in the cold. The first task is to shoulder a burden that would make a modern pack animal complain. This brutal efficiency was the brainchild of a general named Gaius Marius. Before his reforms, a massive baggage train of wagons and mules slowed the army down, making it vulnerable. Marius had a revolutionary idea: make the soldiers carry it themselves. This change made the legions faster and more mobile than any enemy could anticipate. But the price was paid in the agony of the men. They earned a new name: Marius's mules. So what, exactly, was this burden? First, the tools of war. Now comes the sarcina, the soldier's personal pack, hoisted on a forked pole called a furca to distribute the crushing weight. But the most brutal items were your tools. Every soldier carried a piece of the camp. With this weight secured, the march begins. The Roman army didn't stroll. discipline was the glue that held this machine together, and it was absolute. Around midday, there might be a short halt, but this was no relaxing lunch. There were no field kitchens. Meals were cold and grim. The logistical genius required to move and feed tens of thousands of men this way is a testament to Roman brilliance. After 20 grueling miles, you finally reach the spot for the night's camp. The moment the legion halts, it transforms from an army into a massive construction crew. Then, for the next 3 to 5 hours, the back-breaking labor would begin. Only as darkness falls are the walls complete. For many legionaries, battle was a rare interruption to the monotonous, agonizing reality of the march.